Hello and welcome back to season 3 of Jeans and a Nice Top podcast. I am so excited to be back. I can't even explain. The break was so needed, but also I just freaking love doing this. So I've really missed being on here and talking to you guys and getting some really kick-ass guests on to discuss all the things that is adulting, the world, life. I mean, what even was 2021? We started it off in lockdown. We almost thought we were going to end it in a lockdown. We got TikTok virality. We had breakups. We had crazy adventures, friendships, new jobs, old jobs, mayhem. It was a chaotic year. I can't even categorize everything that happened for me, and a really nice Christmas to seal it all off. But wow, what a year, and can't believe we're in 2022. Madness. One of my goals actually involves the number 22, but I'll talk more about that later. Anyway, I thought it was only natural for me to start off the new season with a review of 2021. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk you through my life. That I would take a very long time because I love to babble and I love a segue. But I put a poll on my Instagram and asked you guys to send in a ton of questions, and you've sent in some real corkers. So I'm going to work my way through those and give you another solo episode. Apparently you liked my last one, so we're back doing me, myself and I, and hopefully I can entertain you for how many minutes I will babble on about all the things that is life. Our life is life. Wow, my grammar's already horrendous and we're only in the second week of January. It's going well, people, it's going well. Anyway, I'm so glad to be back, and I'm glad to have you listening and me being your ears again, and hopefully this season is going to be the best one yet. Let's do this. The first question, and actually one of the most popular ones, that really gave me the giggles because I got sassed by my own followers about how I always ask my guests the best piece of advice that they've ever been given, but I never actually offer my own. So fair enough, I'm putting my hands up. You can't see me, so it's in inverted commas, but I'm raising my hands to the sky, and I'm going to tell you the best piece of advice I have ever been given. There are a few. I definitely write them down along the way and have them as backgrounds on my phone, but the piece of advice that always stuck with me and keeps coming up a lot at the moment is that I wish someone had told me when I was younger and starting out in my pursuit of all of these crazy dreams and adventures that I have in my head that I am adamant that I'm going to make happen, is that the more you strive towards success, the more you will fail. And I don't think that's the exact quote of it, but that's what I remember in my head, in the sense that the more you succeed, the more you push towards success, the more you go for things, naturally, the more you're going to fail, the more rejection you're going to get, the more no's you're going to get, which is the thing no one tells you. And that's what makes it so hard to push towards your goals and your dreams and to keep that momentum going, because the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to get rejected, the harder it's going to be, the more failures you're going to get. Because if you're only applying for one job a year, you're only going to get one yes or no. If you're applying to 10, you've got the opportunity of 10 yes or no's. And the key, I think, with goals and moving forward and like I said, maintaining that momentum and that confidence to push for whatever it is that you want to achieve, is knowing and being okay with the fact that you are going to get no's and that it doesn't matter, because out of those 10 no's, one of them will be a yes. And the more no's you get, the more chances you've got of a yes. And that's definitely what I try and apply to the performing industry. And any of my listeners that are in that will definitely relate to me on that sense, in that you just have to keep putting yourself on the line, and it's not easy. But I definitely find it easier with practice, and eventually you're able to compartmentalize, because for me, what I always try and say is, as long as I've done my best, then that's all that matters. Whatever the outcome is, I can't control, but what I can control is what I bring to the table and what I bring to the room. And if I'm happy with what I brought to the table, then whether that is a yes or a no isn't a reflection of me or my worth or my capability. It's just that person's opinion. And the moment I started to adopt that mentality, and don't get me wrong, I'm still trying to adopt it, I'm not always on top form, the easier it gets to put myself out there, because it's not life or death whether I get a yes or no. And I think that's one of the great things about being able to accept the rejection and the failure, is that you don't care and you'll just put yourself up for anything. And they say quite a lot, don't they, specifically with women, that we don't fight for the pay rise or go for those bigger jobs because we overanalyze it before we've even applied. Whereas typically someone who identifies as male will just apply for the job, doesn't even think about it, doesn't even check their own qualifications or question themselves. They just go for it. And I definitely want some more of that, like, badass can-do attitude. My wonderful friend Gemma, actually, we used to talk a lot about big dick energy. It's a phrase that gets thrown around quite a lot, but we were like, why can't it be big tit energy? So that's going to be my phrase for the year is, you're meant to pick a word or a phrase that's going to be the icon or the leadership of your year. Well, my phrase is going to be big tit energy, people. Comment on my latest Instagram, big tit energy, if you're with me. If you don't follow me on Instagram, get your ass on there right away. It's at Smile to Health. I know you'll love it. I also have a book on Amazon, available worldwide, called Curse to Feel. If you want to get really down and emotional with your feelings, it's a poetry book about life. Apparently I like talking about life, so here we go. But that was my first question. Best piece of advice I've ever been given is that the more you strive for success, the more you will fail. And I think there's actually something really peaceful in that. Might just be me. Maybe I'm just wired a little bit differently, but that's definitely what keeps me motivated anyway. The second question was, how do you fit self-love and self-care into a busy schedule? The eternal question is that, I'm not gonna lie. I have a few answers to this one. First of all, I think you have to see it as a priority. So if you don't keep your cup full, you're going to have nothing left in the can or the cup or whatever your analogy wants to be in order to give and to do everything else that you want to do. So in life, there's three people. There's givers, takers, and radiators. And you tend to be a giver or a taker, but what you want to be is a radiator. And a radiator is essentially somebody that will give and will offer out help, assistance, love, guidance to those that need it, but also has enough awareness about them to set boundaries and to keep that radiation and giving to themselves too, so that you're not giving everything away so you have nothing left. You're just radiating, you're radiating that energy. People are feeding off your energy rather than off your physical self, and I think that's really important. And that for me is where self-care begins. It's starting at the base level. I think when we approach self-care, we overcomplicate it. We try and do everything at once. I'm always that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a hair mask twice a week, a face mask twice a week. I'm going to whiten my teeth. I'm going to go for hot girl walks every day for 5 kilometers. And I'm going to work out 7 days a week. And I'm never going to drink. And I'm just going to stop picking my pimples. And I'm going to always be positive to myself and write my affirmations. And it's like, what the hell? I can't even remember the first thing I just said. That's too much, and it's not sustainable, and not all of those things will work for you. Like for some people, self-care is a bubble bath. My mom swears by a bath. Whenever she's sad, tired, stressed, have a bubble bath and you're sorted. For me, it's a cup of tea. Have a nice little biscuit tea, specifically for me, with oat milk. If I'm stressed, if I'm overwhelmed, I take myself into a corner and make myself a cup of tea, and I have my moment of calm. And my yoga mat is the same. But it's about starting small, so that you can actually implement it into your day-to-day life, and then you can add it bit by bit. So for me, Self-Care Sunday has always been a thing, and sometimes plans happen on a Sunday and I have to compromise, but Sundays are the days for most people when no one's doing anything. So tell yourself it's Self-Care Sunday if you have to coin a hashtag to it, and make sure that on that Sunday, that's the day. Because also, side note, told you a segue, but self-care isn't actually always about indulgence. It's about getting the stuff done that you've been avoiding. And for me, that's what a self-care Sunday is. A Sunday for me is doing my washing, hoovering my room, cleaning my bathroom, like deleting all of those random photos and edits and stuff I've got in my phone, emptying my bin, washing my hair because I can't remember the last time I did it, cleaning my makeup brushes. All of this silly stuff, the life admin that builds up across the week when you're too busy or life gets in the way, that for me is the best form of self-care, and it's the easiest one to implement, is to just make sure that your space is calm, because I think if your space is calm, then you can actually function and start to build up from that baseline. If you live in chaos, your life will be chaos. And trust me, I am chaotic. So if my bedroom and my home and my environment is chaotic as well, Lord help me, because I'm digging a hole and I'm burying myself in it. My next thing from there would be, I know that people say to write it in your diary and schedule it in. That doesn't work for me because I will always compromise on myself. I will never compromise on anyone else. The best thing for me is to attach a self-care habit to a habit that I already have. So, for example, for me in the morning, I always drink water in the morning because I am a raisin. I'm an absolute raisin when I wake up. I don't know how people, I love coffee, but if I don't drink water before I drink coffee, I'm going to explode because I'm so dehydrated. So the first thing I do is I get up, I brush my teeth because I hate that feeling of overnight breath. Oh, it actually just gives me the ick thinking about it. I don't know if this is a weird OCD habit. You can call me out on it. I don't know. But yeah, the breath mouth thing. I don't know, it's because I had braces and now I'm just triggered by anything to do with teeth, to be honest. So the first thing I do in the morning is I brush my teeth, come downstairs, have a glass of water, and then I used to sit on my phone, which for me, first thing in the morning, is not an act of self-care because I work online, I have a very busy schedule, I'm managing multiple accounts. The moment I turn on that phone, it's go. So the longer I can prolong it before my actual day begins, the better for my mental health because I'm spending the rest of the day on that phone. So let's just push it back. And so a silly habit for me was to, rather when I sat drinking my water, to go on my phone, I picked up a book or I would journal. And the way I did that was by physically putting the book or journal on top of my phone. So it was the first thing that I did. And I attached that to the habits that were already there, which were brushing my teeth and drinking water, which I'm going to do day in, day out, no matter what happens. And that's the key thing to building those kind of habits and acts of self-care, is to attach them to things that you already do. So if you always spend your lunch break sat at your desk and you don't take it, start small. Say, I'm actually not going to eat at my desk. I'm going to eat in the kitchen or in my bed, wherever you want to eat, outside. And then add to that, okay, I'm going to eat my lunch and then I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk. I'm going to go and grab myself a coffee, or I'm going to go down the road and back. And then eventually, by attaching these habits to habits you already have that are totally ingrained into your psyche, the kind of habits you do without even thinking, then these acts of self-care will then become one of those habits that you do without thinking. So for me now, hydration in the morning, yoga before I go to bed. And when I say yoga, I mean it's like 10 minutes. It's just to like ease out the day because I've been sat like a croissant at a desk all day. Journaling, phoning people that I love. These are things that become second nature, but you have to do the hard bit first. And so make it easier for yourself and attach it into the bits of your day that already happen. But also know that you don't have to do a million forms of self-care every day. Self-care can also be saying no to a workout because you're goddamn tired, or cancelling a plan because you've actually got too much to do and you need to prioritise the tasks rather than going out. XYZ. You know what I'm on about. You know yourself better than anyone, but I think start small, make it sustainable and achievable. Don't overwhelm yourself, and remember it's meant to be enjoyable. Like, self-care is meant to make you feel good, not meant to make you feel bad about yourself for not doing it. So come on, people. And trust me, I am busy. I milk those 24 hours of my day for all they're worth. My sleep pattern is horrendous, and I still manage to find a little bit of time. It's not easy, and it's not about cramming in everything. It's just taking 5 minutes, and it can be the most simplest of things. It's not about going for a really expensive facial in Carnaby Street. It's about just ticking off your to-do list that you've been ignoring, clearing up your inbox, hoovering underneath the sofa that you ignore. You get my vibe. Anyway, I realise I just spoke about the 24 hours a day. It's because the Molly May thing is on my mind. That's a whole other topic that I would love to discuss. So many opinions on that, good and bad. It's a very difficult conversation. But anyway, that's what I meant about I milk the 24 hours of my day. Not we all have the same 24 hours a day, but that I probably overuse my 24 hours a day and that I'm very busy, and that I really had to try to make those acts of self-care happen. And it's not easy, but it is worth it, I promise you. Question number 3. Yeah. How to reframe setbacks so you don't give in. That's a really good question, actually. I'm good at this with some things and other things I'm not. I'm a bit of a weird one in the sense that I'm accustomed to failure. I'm a performer. It comes into my everyday life. It's not something that comes as a shock or as an extreme fear to me because it's just something you learn to kind of take as your day-to-day. But I'm human and things do chip away, and I think having a setback is never easy, but there's another beautiful phrase about failing forward. And I think the first thing I would do is not see it as a setback. I would see it as failing forward, because when something goes wrong, it either teaches you something or it reminds you of something. And what I mean by that is, say you've done something really wrong and you don't understand why it's gone wrong. That then teaches you a lesson that you can then learn and apply to future things in your life. Or you make a mistake, like going back to your ex when you know it's bad and you shouldn't go back, but you do anyway. That just reminds you that you're an idiot and you weren't meant to go back to your ex, okay? So listen to your brain, listen to everyone around you, and don't do it. So it's either a reminder or a lesson. And I think we take life really seriously, and I know I do. I put an immense amount of pressure on myself. I'm such a perfectionist. And that is so much easier said than done. But I think stripping away the seriousness of everything and saying, okay, that went wrong. But it's all right. It went wrong. That's it. No one died. You know, it isn't life or death. It's not going to taint my entire life. I've learned something, or I've been reminded of something, and we move on. A perfect example of this is on Sunday, I went to Barry's boot camp. And I was really tired. So tired. I shouldn't have gone. I should have called it quits. But I'm really trying to make it a habit. And it was my first week of going. And I was like, if I chicken out now, I'm never going to make it a habit and go. So just go, Chels, and just be kind to yourself. Pull it back on the speeds. For anyone that doesn't know, Barry's boot camp is a mixture of interval training on the treadmill and weights. And I love the weight section. I love training weights anyway. And I did it a lot during lockdown, specifically at home. And I've just really found a love for it. But running is a love-hate relationship that we're really trying to work on. But I know it's good for me. And the intervals thing I found really fun because I love that challenge and push. But I can't do all of the speeds of Barry's, especially because I'm very new. So I'm on this treadmill, pushing myself way more than I should, and my speed is way too high, and I just lose my legs. You know, like when a toddler is like walking, and their body is just walking at a different speed to the legs, and it's just like their torso's just going for it, and their little legs are trying to catch up. That was me on the treadmill, to say the least. And I full-blown stacked it, and I was in the middle of the studio. It was like 5 minutes in, and I full on went arse over tit, bam, onto my knees on all fours, and then got propelled across the whole of Barry's boot camp. I've never been so mortified in my entire life. And luckily I sat on the floor and just like was in hysterical laughter and not tears. I think internally I was crying of embarrassment, but externally I was like, lol, what the hell just happened? I just got propelled across the whole of Barry's. And then I was too proud to then leave the class because I was like, I have to finish. So I tell you this because that was mortifying to me. I know it's a different version of a setback, but this is just a basic level setback that I think people don't consider these kind of things from day-to-day life that can actually affect you just as much as a really big setback, like losing your job or a relationship not working or whatever. But if you strip it back and make it into something like this, the lesson for me was don't push yourself when you're tired. Let go of the ego. And also the reminder was that you can push through anything. So I could have got up and left that class if I wanted to, but I didn't. I got up, brushed myself off, definitely had the giggles, and got back on the treadmill at a lower speed, pretty much like a very light jog, to be honest, because then I got the fear of the treadmill. But I got back on and I finished the class. And that was my moment to go, okay, I can let this entire moment ruin me and say I'm never going to Barry's again. I'm mortified. Everyone in this room is going to be thinking about me and bitching about me and telling everyone how this stupid little girl got propelled across the room. No one cared. They were all just trying to breathe and not fall off the treadmill themselves, most likely. My challenge there and my reminder was to get back on the treadmill and push through hard things. That would be my advice with reframing setbacks, is to know that it's either a lesson or a reminder. And sometimes what I physically have to do is go, you know, for example, as you all know on this podcast, I went through a really nasty, well, it wasn't a nasty, it was a very emotional breakup last year. And I literally had to write down the lessons and the reminders. And I physically had to keep reminding myself. I had a piece of paper on my wall with the lessons and reminders that I kept having to refer back to make myself feel better and to help me heal. And I think we have to acknowledge that as well, is that a setback can sometimes feel like trauma, depending on how big the setback is. But just be kind to yourself, as I always say, and allow yourself to feel sad or to mope or be embarrassed or whatever, but then remind yourself that there's a bigger picture and it's just one thing that went wrong, or, you know, it might be multiple things that go wrong, but you learn from them or you're reminded of something. And I think there's actually beauty in that, because if you got everything right all the time, how boring would life be? My life would be very boring, but actually very calm, and I wouldn't mind it. Next question is how to make goal setting achievable. This links into kind of what I was saying earlier about, I think the main problem with goal setting is that we set too many, we make them too big, too challenging, and we don't give ourselves enough time. So then we're never going to achieve them in the first place, and then we back ourselves into a corner and we're just left there feeling rubbish about ourselves and feeling like we failed when actually we never really gave ourselves a chance. And I think you see a lot on TikTok at the moment as well, of all these different goals. Like you've got to have a health goal and a money goal and a career goal and a life goal, and it's just a lot. Like you don't have to be achieving all the time. And I know anyone that knows me is going to be rolling their eyes at me and going, listen to yourself, because I don't listen to that, and I'm awful. I will tick something off and I move on to the next, and I never appreciate the thing that I just ticked off. And it's because I set too many goals and make them unattainable, and then I have this consistent need to have to tick off. So trust me when I say this from somebody that needs to apply it themselves. Over the past few years, I've been playing around with goal setting and kind of what works for me. And I used to do the whole separating it into categories and having all these things, and I just got really overwhelmed. And what I then started to do was to have one big goal for the year, which was more of an action or a feeling. So say if your main goal is to lose weight, I'm saying that because it's January and it's all anyone talks about. Rather than saying, I want to lose weight, my goal for the year would be, I want to feel healthy and strong in my body, or I want to feel good about myself and confident in my choices. Because then by having a more generic phrase like that, you can then pepper it out into mini goals, which you can then achieve throughout the year. Because bearing in mind, seasonality makes a difference. Like for me, why does anyone go on a diet in January? It's bloody depressing. It's freezing. We've just had Christmas. No one's got any money. Life is hell. The last thing I want to do is cut out chocolate and be on a treadmill 5 days a week. I know I said I went to Barry's, but I do actually enjoy it. Seasonality, people. Pick your moments. There's a reason eating salads in summer is easier. So yeah, I think the biggest thing... Sorry, we went on one then. I think the biggest thing is to have one main goal, which is a feeling or an action or something that's just a lot easier to apply. So say if like love is your main goal, love can apply to a lot of things. You can love your life, you can love your job, you can have a partner that you love and that loves you, you can love yourself. And then the goal would be, I want to be aware, grateful, and in abundance of love. That's just something that was plucked off the top of my head, but you get the vibe. It's a feeling and it's an action and it's something that's a positive rather than I will lose this or X, Y, Z. Like if you're ever losing something, you're never going to stick to it, but if you feel like you're gaining something, you will. And then there's 12 months in a year, and I think it's much more attainable. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can either set monthly goals where you have 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, depending on how big the goal is for each month, and then that is your focus. It narrows it far more down. It gives you way more focus. So rather than trying to achieve a million things throughout the year and then kind of half doing all of them and never really committing to anything, if you set mini goals that you achieve, that is your just like a one focus a month, you can focus on that one thing. It's like when you were at school. When you were in maths class, you thought about maths. When you were in English, you thought about English. You weren't doing a maths, English, science, RE, art class all in one go. It wouldn't be possible. So do the same with your goals. Give yourself a chance and actually just give yourself a focus. And then going off from that, another thing that works for me is having the big goal. So say, last year my goal was to launch this podcast. But to get to that step, there's lots of mini steps to get there, right? So if you write the big goal at the top of a piece of paper, and then you write all of the steps that you can think of that would help you achieve that goal, and then put them in an order, and then tick them off. And then you've got the top of the ladder and lots of mini steps along the way to get you there. So then rather than just trying to jump and be like, I need to release a podcast tomorrow, not going to happen. If I put in all the little steps, like I need to find a hosting software, I need to get a microphone, I need to plan my guest list, I need to plan my interviews, I need to record, I need to set time aside for editing, I need to promote it, it then becomes way more achievable because you can look at the end goal and physically see the steps that you can action to get there. And I think that's another one of the biggest reasons why people don't go for their goals. They have it in their head, but they never go for it because it just seems so unattainable. It seems impossible. It seems so far removed because all you're looking at is the final destination. You're not actually giving yourself the chance to break it down into little bite-sized chunks. Like, I'm sure there's a saying that says how do you eat an elephant, and it's one bite at a time. I don't know who has ever eaten an elephant. I mean, I'm vegan, so back off if you're eating elephants. They're lovely animals, leave them be. And have you ever watched Dumbo? Like, what are you doing? Anyway, one bite at a time. Don't eat the whole cake in one go. You'll get a really bad stomach and probably poo yourself. So break it down, make it easy, make it palatable, and actually write out those steps, because sometimes you don't even know how you're going to get there. Like, your goal might be that you want to buy a house, but you've never actually saved. So you need to break down the goal of physically saving and actioning that in order to facilitate that end goal happening. Or say you want to, relocate, move somewhere. So say you've always lived at home and you want to move to the city. there's steps in place that you have to action in order to make that happen. Or you're trying to move jobs, or like I said before, start a new habit. Maybe you want to run a marathon. Break it down. You can't just book a marathon, run it the next day. You have to do the training, you have to do the prep. I use all these analogies because the only reason I get anything done is because I break it down. Like, I'm a girl with lists. I have lists for everything. I literally got about 4 notebooks from my mum and dad for Christmas because I have books for everything that I do in life. Like, I have a book for this podcast, I have a book for my muggle job, I have a book for my goals, I have a book for my to-do lists. Like, you have to physically break it down and just make it easier for your brain, because otherwise your brain is just going to be so overwhelmed. It's never going to happen, and then you're just going to feel really burnt out and not excited by your goals. And I think that's the thing as well. Like, you need to enjoy it and be excited by it. Like, I've picked one of the hardest industries to be in, which is the performing industry, but it excites me so much, and that's why I can't walk away. I know it's hard, I know it's impossible a lot of the time, I know it's right place, right time, but it sets me on fire so much and makes me so excited. That's why I do it, and I break it down. I break down the tasks I set for myself, and it makes it feel more possible. Whether it happens or not, whatever, but I know I've done my best, and I think that's how you do it. I know it's a very long-winded way, and there's a lot of different ways, but I think having a general goal for the year, or a word for the year, you know, a big tit energy, that makes it a lot easier to have the feeling that you want to embody for that year. And then have monthly goals, or have 3 big goals for the year, and that's all you work for. I mean, it does depend on how big your goals are. Like, if you want to set up your own business, that's going to take up your entire year. That has so many little micro steps that you need to work on. But if you've got some smaller goals that you're wanting to hit, you know, like eating more fruit and veg, or just getting your steps in, or making more time to phone your parents, those are easier goals that you can implement slowly but surely and make monthly goals. So you know what your vision is. And I think also sometimes just writing it down on paper, commit to yourself. I think a lot of people like to talk about stuff, but they never actually give themselves the confidence to do it. So I think less talking, more doing. Write it down, break it down, and then just have the faith in yourself to make it happen. That's my best advice. It's not easy, and you'll have setbacks, and sometimes you'll achieve them and sometimes you won't. Sometimes goals have hit me clean in the face and I've been like, what? How did that happen? And then other times I feel like I'm still chipping away at goals I've had for years. But that's just the way it is. Some of them take a bit more time. You know what you're going to do, and just have the confidence and the faith to do it. Next question. How to be productive in the journaling process. I've always wanted to journal, but I never really know how to start, and I feel like it's too complicated. Fair. Absolutely fair. I mean, the journaling's really become a trend now, and I think because it's become a trend and a self-care thing, it's then become really overcomplicated. And I think this is always the problem with when things become a social media hype. Journaling isn't meant to be difficult. It's not meant to feel obligatory. It's not meant to feel like another thing you fail at. It's meant to be a way for you to let all of that go. So there's loads of different forms of journaling. So there's I can't remember the founder that created this, but I remember now. So there's an incredible book called The Artist's Way. I've never read it in its entirety. It's by an incredible woman called Julia Cameron, and she talks about this thing called morning pages. And basically the act of it is that you get a blank notebook, and first thing in the morning, before you've gone on your phone, before you've thought about anything, before you started getting your brain going for the day, you literally just brain dump onto the page. That could be 3 pages, could be 5. It's just a constant stream of writing. There's no structure to it. There's no tick lists. It could literally be doodles, random words, a to-do list, something you've remembered, anything. And it's just about getting everything out onto the page, and then off you go, and you can start your day. And it's meant to inspire a lot of creativity. It's meant to give you a lot more freedom and bring up loads of stuff that you've probably been suppressing and never allowed brain space for, because as we go through our day to day, we get bombarded and bogged down with our to-do lists, or somebody that's annoyed us in a meeting, or, you know, somebody parked on our driveway or annoyed us or whatever. And I personally need more structure, but I know a lot of people thrive off that. And that's definitely one to try. And I think that's the thing with journaling as well, is it's trial and error. And I think people forget that, and it is annoying because I'm such a control freak, and I'm like, tell me what to do. I want to journal. What do I do? And actually, like, there isn't a way to journal. There's like lots of versions people have, but there's not a right or wrong way to do it. So that's one way. Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. It's actually on my to-read list this year. So I'll be able to give you more information on that when I've actually read the book, but I don't want to misquote it. But morning pages is a great thing. I know quite a few people that do that. a really simple way to start journaling, which is actually how I started, was just a gratitude list. First thing in the morning, exactly the same as morning pages. Do it on your phone, do it in a notebook. I think journaling helps when you physically write it down, so stay away from technology if you can, but I know some people like to write on iPads with digital pens and stuff like that. And just write down 3 things you're grateful for, 5 things, 10 things, however many you want to do, and just start your day in that place of gratitude. And that's one of the key elements of journaling, is that it's meant to put your headspace, it's meant to shift it away from this analytical, critical and self-loathing position a lot of us spend it in, and pivot us into a position where we're a lot more positive, we feel a lot lighter, we feel like there's ease towards your day. It's like meditation or yoga or anything like that. You're meant to feel more easeful. And a gratitude list is a really easy way to do that. There's an incredible book called One Line a Day. I actually do that in the evening. I think it's nice to have something that you were grateful for that day and that you write down, and then you can look back at the years before if you keep it up. But a gratitude list is a super simple way to start. And then you can bulk it out. So it can be affirmations, write an affirmation for the day. I know some people are like, write 3 things and 3 affirmations and 5 gratitude lists and all of this, but I think keeping it simpler is better, and then you'll find a way that works for you. So I tend to write an affirmation for the day, 3 things I'm grateful for, how I'm feeling. Sometimes that can be like a free journaling thing, in that I'm worried about this, or this is stressing me out, or I've got this coming up. I tend to get the negative out on paper because I want to release it from my body. And then I write a solution for myself as well, and that's really important. I think if you're journaling about anything that's negative, it's really important to pivot that narrative and make it a lot more positive. So offer yourself a solution rather than catastrophizing over what that thing is that's stressing you out. Write down the solution, and sometimes physically being able to write it out is the same as talking it out, or just giving yourself options on paper. I think it can just make people feel a lot better. So that's definitely something that helps me. And then I've recently started doing this thing where it's one thing I'm thankful for of myself, and that can be really silly. Like I've had a really stressful few weeks just with life, a lot going on, and it's really been burning my candle at every end, and that's been really difficult post-Christmas. And the thing I was thankful for myself was my resilience. And that's like a really nice way to just thank yourself as well. I think we look for all this gratitude and this appreciation everywhere else, and I think actually taking the time to shift it back and go, actually, I'm doing a really good job and I'm proud of myself too. And I don't think we recognise that enough, and that's a really it links into the self-care of what I was talking about earlier, in the sense that in order to treat yourself well, you actually have to like yourself, you have to love yourself, and you have to spend your day acting from a place of love. And this is one of those really easy ways to do it. It's just by thanking yourself for getting out of bed in the morning, for making yourself drink that water, for saying no when the people pleaser in you wanted to say yes. Show that gratitude back towards yourself, and that's a really easy way to start implementing self-care, because I think we find it so difficult to compliment ourselves and to see the good. And that's a really important part of my journaling process anyway. And I think if you have a tick list, so if the question was about productive journaling. So I think first of all, make it small. If you're busy, keep it super simple, do a gratitude list. Easiest form of journaling, makes you feel great. Another way is I always do journaling first thing in the morning. I find with anything, as you go through the day, the longer the day goes on, the less likely you are to get anything done, because things happen, life goes off grid. As much as you could structure and plan out every hour of your day, you never know what's going to happen. So I think getting it done first thing, and I don't mean that I'm ticking it off, but just doing it before the chaos of the day gets to you, means that you'll implement it, it'll be productive, and it starts you on a positive note. Keep it simple, and if you need to physically buy a guided journal, there's so many out there. I love the Glow Up by Victoria Spence, I think it is. I'll link her journal in the show notes. But she's got a really good one called the Glow Up. There's the 5-minute journal. There's so many options out there now. You can literally give it a Google and find what works for you. And then eventually you'll get to a place where you just free journal and you find a way that works for you. But there is no right or wrong. And I think that's the key element here, is don't put pressure on it. Just find what works for you and what feels good. And that can literally be a gratitude list, or it can be a set walkthrough that you do every day. But as long as it makes you feel good, that's the focus. So if it becomes too complicated and too much like a chore and something you have to tick off, then don't do it. I would love to journal every day, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't feel like I need to, and that's okay as well. It's the same as you don't have to work out every day, or you don't have to eat broccoli fully every day. That was my rant on that one. But I do love journaling. I think it's such an incredible tool, and although I moaned about social media, I am glad it's becoming a thing, because actually people take it more seriously when it's a trend. Whereas like when I was preaching about journaling back in like 2012, everybody thought I was like a raving nutcase. So glad that it's becoming more socially acceptable to walk around with a notebook at all times. Oh, next question, and this might be my final one because I have been babbling quite a tad, is what lessons did I learn in 2021? I learned many. Blimey. Not to be dramatic, but 2021 was quite possibly the best and worst year of my life. It was very, very challenging. One of the biggest lessons I learned was at the very beginning of the year, and it was because I lost my nan on New Year's, and I was with my boyfriend at the time, who I'd only been with for like 3 or 4 months, and I found out over the phone I was away from home. It was very unexpected. And I'm not very good at being vulnerable. I really struggle to let anyone in. I always have my guard up. I always put on, even when I'm not feeling it, I always want to radiate positivity and be a joy facilitator. And that's not fake. I genuinely am a positive and happy person, but I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to maintain that, when actually sometimes I need to just log off and take a back burner. And this was definitely one of those examples, in the sense that it broke me. I was broken. Really struggled to let myself have the help that I needed from somebody that actually I was still in my head trying to impress. And it really taught me the power and the beauty of vulnerability, and that it's not a weakness to cry or to feel sad, and I preach this all the time about mental health. And I think because I'm so self-aware and active in the mental health space, you weirdly become guarded because you are somebody that is self-aware. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I've been on this journey a long time, and for me what's weird is the day-to-day stuff is what I struggle to be vulnerable with, more so than the more hard-hitting stuff like mental health. So something like this was just, I literally didn't know how to cope or to let anyone in, and I was kind of forced to. Actually, that was probably one of the best and most beautiful lessons I was given, and that there's actually a real beauty in vulnerability. It brings you close to people. It helps you learn more about yourself. You don't have to do everything on your own. And I was definitely culprit for that, always fighting my own battles and never letting myself have a team behind me. And that was a really hard-hitting but beautiful lesson to start the year off in, and it's something I'm definitely going to carry on through the rest of my years now, is that, you know, being vulnerable isn't a weakness, it's definitely a strength, and actually can make so many life situations a lot easier. It's so much easier to do stuff as a team. So that's a bit of a depressing one, sorry, but it is a really important lesson, I think, and definitely one I have to keep being reminded of. More positive one is just say yes. And I kind of annoyed at myself, because when I graduated drama school in 2019, I really had this can-do attitude, and I just went, no matter what it is, I'm just going to say yes. And I'm going to trust that the universe is going to throw opportunities my way that are going to propel me in the path that I'm meant to be on. And I'm just going to work hard, and I'm going to enjoy life. And my focus is going to be on happiness and living my life, and the rest will fall into place. And then 2019 and then the beginning of 2020 pre-COVID ended up being some of the most mad, adventurous, fun and exhilarating times of my life. Obviously COVID hit and messed all of that up for everyone, and it was because I said yes. And I, at the beginning of the year, didn't do that so much. I kind of backed off and started going back in my shell again, and that wasn't me. And then the summer, like post breakup, and then like throughout the rest of the year, I really started saying yes again. And then so much started flooding in. And I think sometimes when you just open yourself up to life and just go, fuck it, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just going to say yes and just see what happens. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying sometimes. Like some of the stuff I say yes to, I'm like, Chelsea, what the hell are you doing? But it also is like been some of the most amazing memories and just brilliant experiences. So yeah, second biggest lesson I learned was just say yes. And that is another one I'm carrying through to 2022. The bigger, the bolder, the better. Just keep saying yes and don't worry about the outcome. Just do what feels right in the moment and just run with it, and everything will fall into place. Like we said before, if it fails, it fails. You learn or you remember. That's how it goes. And yeah, that's definitely going to be a big overarching theme, I think, for the next few years of my life. Just saying yes and seeing what happens. I've passed the 25 point now, so sod it. What else can I do? I don't want a conservatory and I don't want a baby right now, so we'll just say yes. My third biggest lesson learned is boundaries. I've talked about this before in some of my other podcast episodes, but it's a struggle. Any of my people pleasers out there, raise your hands, holler at me over here. Boundaries are a difficult one, and I experienced a few interesting situations around boundaries last year where I set boundaries and they weren't respected, and that was really difficult for me because setting boundaries has always been something I'm found really challenging. And so one of my really good friends reminded me that the people that don't respect your boundaries are the reason those boundaries are there in the first place. And I think as you get older, it's really hard to step away from that people pleasing can-do version of yourself where, like we said before, you give and give and give and give, and the takers will continue to take in all aspects of your life. So you have to set a boundary so that you can keep that self-care and maintain that bit of you back in order to be able to live your life and be happy and do all of that other stuff. And I know I'm awful at them. I definitely am. I give 110% to everyone and everything in my life, and that's amazing in so many senses. It enables me to have the most meaningful and wonderful connections with people and live this amazing life that I am so grateful for. But it also means that I burn out quite a lot. I'm very stressed and I bully myself, and that's something that I want to change in 2022, is to have firmer boundaries and to know that I am allowed to do that because I'm respecting myself and making a promise to myself for that boundary. And when I say boundaries, it can be, the things that people talk about all the time, like making sure that you finish work on time. If you are meant to finish at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whenever your end of day finishes, finish at that time. Stop working over for people that will not say, well done, will not thank you, will not give you the credit that you deserve. You're burning yourself out for no reason. Set that boundary so that you have that time for yourself. Or if there is a person that always makes a comment about your body or about your life or the fact that you're single, set a boundary. Stand up for yourself. Tell them that you don't think that's appropriate, or stop hanging around with that person, or just set a conversation boundary there. If somebody, you get what I mean. There's so many examples I could use for boundaries, and you know them, and the ones that you need to honour and respect. And I think seeing a boundary as a promise to yourself is the biggest change in making you honour them more, because I think by making a promise to yourself, you're more likely to commit to it rather than saying, oh yeah, like I might do that. Like, no, commit to it. Make that promise to yourself and set that boundary. And like my friend said, if someone doesn't respect that boundary, then that was the reason it was there for in the first place. And I think, yeah, it's not easy. I've had to do it with a few people this year on my life, and it's been really difficult because I like to see the good in everyone, and unfortunately some people aren't good. They're not, and they will take and they will put you down to make themselves feel better, and you have to just acknowledge that that's the way they are, set a boundary and move on. And I think especially with setting boundaries with people, I've listened to so many podcasts about how you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So spend the time with the people that make you feel good, the people that would say your name in a room full of opportunities, the people that back your corner and cheerlead you when you don't know how to. There are so many incredible people out there that you might not have even met yet. So don't waste your time surrounding yourself with people that will never acknowledge or help you shine your own light. And again, hands up, definitely need to get better at this. I'm very lucky that I have incredible people in my life. Like, I absolutely adore my family. They're so supportive. I have incredible friends that I've met along the way that inspire me every day. But I still encounter people that I have to set boundaries with, that I have to take a step back from. And that's not easy. That's definitely a big challenge, especially as an adult. It's not easy. Walking away from people can feel like a breakup. So, but yeah, there's so many lessons I could say, but I think those are my top 3, is just say yes, boundaries, and being vulnerable, I think are the best boundaries. And I'll very quickly touch on the final topic because we've talked about goals, self-care and all of that malarkey. And I thought I'd share a couple of my silly, fun and DMC goals for the year. So I said earlier that one of my goals is to do with 22, and it's because I spend way too much time on my phone. So my goal for 2022 is to read 22 books for 2022. So there's 12 months in the year, so it equates to pretty much 2 books every month of the year. I really had to think about that then. Wow. So far, I've almost finished my first book, so I'm well chuffed with myself because I love to read and I just don't read often enough. And
I found that if you start off with a really good fiction that hooks you in, then you get into the habit. So I'm trying to do that. Any of my Londoners, just take a book for your commute, and it's the easiest way to get some pages in. And also read before bed. That's a great one to stop you scrolling on TikTok and losing 4 hours of your life, because also, hands up, culprit for doing that. And my second goal is, well, it's a bit of a weird one in the sense that it's, how do I word it? It's basically to prioritise myself, but I don't mean that in a negative way. It's to make sure that my cup's full before I give to everyone else's. So actually for me, it's slowing down, it's saying no to things, not filling my schedule 7 days a week. Like in 2021, I barely had any gaps in my calendar, and as amazing as that was, it was mayhem, and my bank account was crying at the end of it, and so was my battery. Like my personal battery of life was like, no, please sleep, please go to bed, and please, for the love of God, eat some spinach. So my big thing for me is, I always say, what would someone who loved themselves do? And I think that's kind of my goal for 2022 as well, is to act from a place of love, whatever that may be. Sometimes that is a love of wine. Sometimes that is a love of making sure I sleep, or going to a Barry's class. So that's goal number 2, a little bit more of a well-being, lifey one. And then a career goal for me is, anyone that follows me on social media and knows me in like my personal life, is I'm a massive creative, came from the acting industry, and I've found a huge love for presenting and radio. And I won't tell you the specifics of this one, but there's goals around pursuing that career and really making it happen, because it brings me so much joy and I'm so excited and I just love it. So I'm determined to have that as a tick list this year and make some magic happen there. So that's a few of my cheeky little goals. Would love to hear yours. Please head over, like I mentioned before, to my social media account, my wellness page, where I share all updates on this is, and by this I mean this podcast, is at Smile to Health, and that's all for things life, well-being, mental health, body positivity, long captions, big rambles, but I know you love it deep down. And then if you fancy a bit of the personal me, to be honest, it's just a lot of selfies, is Chelsea is a little. And like I mentioned before, you've got my book available worldwide on Amazon, which is Cursed to Feel. It is so good to be back. Thank you for listening to my solo ramble. I've managed to keep it under an hour this time, so I'm chuffed with that. That's ticking off a goal. Stop rambling, stop segueing as much, in brackets. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, don't forget to rate, review and subscribe, and prepare yourself for season 3 of the best podcast ever, obviously. Love you lots, people. Ciao.